Today we're going to be breaking down the Chicago Bears' standout performances in their win over the New York Giants. We're also going to talk about the players that didn't look so good. We're talking about both those things, plus dive a little bit into the mailbag, and it's time for Haize to pull some receipts. Petty Roosevelt is coming. We're going to get to all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm your host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. I want to start off talking about the standout players, the lowlights, whatever, from yesterday's game. We're going to start off in the positive with the standouts. Only got a couple of players as far as mentioning in the negative side of things, but let's start off with the standouts. CJ Gardner-Johnson. I want to say that again for the people in the back. CJ Gardner-Johnson. Listen, I have loved what he has come in here and brought to the Chicago Bears in only 2 weeks, and has been at a position that we need the production at that corner, in that slot, in that nickel position with Kyler Gordon being out. He continues to just make plays. He stood out in yesterday's game, and even one of the things that he stood out in was the thing that wasn't even on a defensive play. The offense went on a big run down this, or a big gain down the sideline, and CJ Gardner-Johnson was right there at the end of the play on the sideline celebrating with his teammate, and that's just something that stood out to me. But then when you talk about on the football field, he led the defense with 9 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 QB hits, and a forced fumble. CJ Gardner-Johnson has been such a breath of fresh air for a Bears team that needed a little bit of edge. He has brought that. He now has 3 sacks in 2 games and is already one of the Bears with the most sacks on the team, which is crazy to say that he's come in here and made that level of impact for the Chicago Bears team, but it's real. He is not disappointed by any stretch of the imagination. He now is 3rd on the team in sacks behind Montez Sweat with 5.5 and Javon Dexter with 4. CJ Gardner-Johnson has been such a revelation for this Bears team, and I wanted to mention and talk about him first because the way that he's made an impact coming into this team has been absolutely amazing, and I love what he's brought to this Bears team. Outside of that, we got to talk about also Caleb Williams, and we're going to get into a voicemail where somebody has a little bit of hate for Caleb Williams, and that's where I'm about to get petty at. But here's the thing. It wasn't the best statistical game for Caleb Williams, right? And I will say this, even then it wasn't as terrible as some people are going to make it out to be. But what Caleb Williams continues to do and show for the Chicago Bears team is that in the fourth quarter of close games, he is one of the most poised players on this team. He was 20 of 36 for 220 yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers, an 83 passer rating, but then he also made plays with his legs and made the game-winning 17-yard touchdown run as well. He has been clutch in the fourth quarters for basically his whole career. Go back and look at it. Even in his rookie year, with the up and downness of offensive coordinators, he put up some very impressive fourth quarter numbers. Now, the Bears weren't able to seal the deal in all of those, but now we're starting to see that when the game's on the line and it's in the fourth quarter, you put the ball in Caleb Williams' hands, and he finds a way to make things happen and does lead the team to success. And you got to love that, to see that from your quarterback in their second year under this head coach of Ben Johnson. Him and CJ Gardner-Johnson got the game balls for the Chicago Bears after yesterday's game, and it was deservedly so. They made such a big impact for this team. And like I said, at this point, you start like that. And again, criticism and hate are different. I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate criticisms towards Caleb Williams by what he does on the football field. There absolutely is, and I want to be clear in that. Take nothing away from that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? There are things that he needs to tighten up in this game, but in a game where we had 10 drops, and, Ben Johnson had to talk about those drops after the game, saying it's an anomaly as things stand right now, but when the Bears had a number of drop passes, that's not to say that Caleb Williams still didn't have some underthrows or things like that, but when you have the number of drop passes that Caleb Williams did, you get half of those back. Caleb was probably at 300 yards and 2 touchdowns at minimum. But what it could have, should have, doesn't matter. What he still did, even despite that, is something that needs to be acknowledged and recognized. And Caleb Williams is the Bears. The Bears have a franchise quarterback. Get over it. The Bajan baddies, get over it. The people, again, they are not moving away from Caleb, especially not while they are winning, right? And then on top of that, he is showing growth in some of the most major areas that we wanted to see growth from him coming into the season. Like I said before, you still hate on Caleb. That says more about you than anything else. Odunze also gets to be called a standout in this game after what was probably his worst outing as a Chicago Bear, right? Then you had some off-the-field stuff with his father being a prima donna. He came in here and reminded everybody why he is the number 1 receiver on this team. 6 receptions for 86 yards, 1 touchdown on 10 targets. It was good. Now, this was his first touchdown since September 24th in week 4, after he started off each of the 4 weeks getting a touchdown in each game. But listen, he's Caleb Williams' favorite target. Usually when Caleb has a good game, it means Rome's going to have a good game too. He's a team player, and Rome Odunze continues to show why he's an offense now and in the future for the Chicago Bears. And again, you want to keep denying that, then you're going to be on the opposite side of history. All right, Montez Sweat as well gets to be acknowledged here. After a slow start for Montez Sweat has now put up a sack, I think, in 4 straight games. If you look at his production over the last 4 games, it's just, I get it that the Bears defense itself has not been great, but imagine how much worse it would be if Montez wasn't having the type of impact that he had. 3 tackles yesterday, 1 tackle for a loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 QB hits, and he now has 3.5 sacks in the last 4 games. Montez Sweat is producing, and I got to tell you something about that, man. The way that we see Montez Sweat playing now, the thing that I laid out for him that I wanted to see from Montez is just make your presence felt every game. Coming away from a game, we need to feel like Montez Sweat did some stuff out there. And you know what we've been feeling and seeing is Montez Sweat that makes his presence felt on every single game over that 4-game stretch. And let's hope that he finishes this season out as strong as what he's been playing the last 4 games, because it's been great to see from Montez. And then the last player that I want to point out as far as in a positive light is Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland has just been really good. The game-winning touchdown in last week's game, right? He came into this one, and while it wasn't like huge stuff in the box score for him, you got to look at it. He wasn't targeted once in the first half of the game. He finished the game with 4 catches, 55 yards on 4 targets, all that production coming in the second half of the game. A 20-yard reception on 3rd and 10 to keep a scoring drive alive in the 4th quarter. Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet both are starting to find success as blockers and starting to find that balance that you wanted from them as your tight end core when you brought those guys in. Now, Cole Kmet didn't have the strongest game himself, but there still was some good things that they're doing as a tandem and as a unit. And Colston Loveland, like I said before, he's probably still the best route runner on this Bears team, or close to it. And the impact that he's had and the fact that we're starting to see more and more out of Colston, I think is perfect, because that is the player that we brought him in here to be. And I think it's really good to see him consistently do that at this point in time. And let's hope that we're going to continue it. Now, as far as the negative, Olamide Zaccheaus, man. Listen, it was a night where there were a lot of drop passes, and he had 4 drops himself on in yesterday's game. Out of the 10 drops for the Chicago Bears, 4 coming from him. And when you look at them having a couple of them happen on critical downs as well, one of those drops would have been a surefire touchdown. That was the one extra touchdown I wanted to give Caleb. And he finished with 1 catch for 5 yards. But when you see somebody like Zaccheaus, who has been so good, I want to be clear, this is me talking about it because he has been really solid in that slot, and the Bears have been able to bet on him. To see Olamide Zaccheaus just have that level of game where a lot of the drops came down to him, it was disappointing. And then you got Cole Kmet as well. Like Kmet, like I said, blocking-wise, Kmet did some really good things. I want to be clear here. Really good things Cole Kmet did in blocking yesterday. But the 2 targets that he had, one was caught for only 5 yards, right? And it just, listen, like I said before, I understand the people that are like, is Colston Loveland going to end up being the TE1 here? And he may be. Now, I'm still not at the place where I'm willing to give up Cole Kmet, because I want to see what both these guys can do, especially as we hopefully establish a better run game and do something in the offseason for the run game. But Cole Kmet did not have the strongest game yesterday, and it really did stand out as a negative impact for the Chicago Bears. And then Noah Sewell. Noah Sewell has done an adamant job stepping in for TJ Edwards on the most part of the season. And I want to be clear here. This is not me saying an indictment on him overall on this season. This is just an evaluation of one game. Sewell in last night's game was a liability in coverage for the Chicago Bears. A huge liability in coverage. And that is something that you cannot continue to overlook. And he's been better than that. And so I'm going to give him credit that he's going to turn it around. Everybody has bad games. So again, not an indictment on the season, but it was a really bad game for him. And you look at it, he gave up, what should have been a stop on a 4th and 3, and it ended up into a 40-yard catch and run and a missed tackle by Noah Sewell. And that really what stood out. He also had a personal foul on Jackson Dart as well with that one. And so listen, we know what Noah Sewell can be, and I think he can be it consistently for this Bears team. But yesterday's game, it was more of the bad from Noah. But knowing what we've seen from Noah and even his look on his face after he gave up that 40-yard run, I think that we're going to see a much more locked in, and Noah Sewell's going to come out trying to make an impact in next week's game, and best believe we're going to need it as well. So I think Noah's going to be better, but it was a bad game for Noah. And then Tyreek Stevenson. This was a game of two halves for Tyreek, and I want to be clear. Second half, Tyreek probably would deserve to go in the standouts positively. First half, Tyreek, it deserves to go in the bad side of it, right? It just wasn't good. It wasn't good. The passing defense struggled overall, but Tyreek Stevenson had a tough showing overall. He had 6 tackles, 1 pass breakup, but he looked lost out there at times on the field. And it was the second straight game for him coming back from his shoulder injury, but he struggled in both those games. And hopefully we get to see him be more back again, especially more in press, and we'll see him be back more towards what we've seen from Tyreek Stevenson at times this season. But overall, those are my standouts, both good and bad for the Chicago Bears. But with that said, I want to talk about Colston Loveland and his conversation and what he said about Caleb Williams. He said this: he's a unicorn for sure. I like how he is not sacked. How is he not sacked, right? He's just running around super slippery. Now, and we're going to get into a voicemail from some Caleb haters and stuff like that. But like I said, when it comes down to it, Caleb Williams is being sacked much less last year, right? He was sacked 14 times. He's been only sacked 14 times in 9 games, right? Which comes out to 1.5 sacks per game, basically. That's down so far from what it was last year that it's ridiculous. And when you look at Caleb Williams as well, right? Even when he did get sacked a ton in 2024, it didn't really let him stay in him, right? And so now Caleb Williams is starting to come into his own. And like I said, the people that still have some doubt, some hate towards Caleb Williams, they're going to have to start eating some crow or just shutting the fuck up sooner rather than later, because Caleb is showing it and what he can be for this Bears team. And I love to see Caleb Williams grow and how the season's been going for him. And like I say, there's still some things that he definitely needs to tighten up. I want to see the completion percentage get better. I'm not even talking about the drops. That's different. Like, I want to see those things, of course, get better for Caleb. But say what you will about Caleb Williams. Caleb is playing really well right now, and you got to love to see it. But with that said, let's get into it. This one last thing before we get into the voicemails. Every year after the trade deadline, you hear about trades your team almost made, right? That's for everyone that you hear it from everywhere, right? But according to Ian Rappaport, the Chicago Bears nearly traded for Alontae Taylor right at the trade deadline. You notice this. Chicago was deep in talks for Taylor before a deal fell through. The Indianapolis Colts, who made a huge trade for Sauce Gardner, also had discussions. Before the Colts struck their mega deal for Gardner, they had discussions centered around Saints cornerback Alontae Taylor, who drew real interest on Monday and Tuesday. In fact, sources say the Bears were deep in talks for Taylor before a deal ended up falling through. Taylor was in a contract year and likely will get paid this offseason. Spent time with Bears defensive coordinator Dennis Allen when he was head coach in New Orleans, and the fit made sense. And so, listen, it seems like the Bears were trying to fill and figure out their cornerback need. Now, we got CJ Gardner-Johnson here. We had him here before the trade deadline, and maybe this is something that the Bears do revisit in the offseason for Alontae Taylor. But at the end of the day, I'm not mad at the Bears for not making a trade, especially if it took taking a top 3 pick or picks in rounds 1 through 3, right? But, again, we're going to hear a lot of what the Bears almost did. We're going to hear a lot of that. It happens every year after the trade deadline. But as I say to many people, don't let it bother you. It kind of is what it is when it comes down to it. But Petty Roosevelt is about to chef up. And it's time to dive into the mailbag. This first voicemail that we got is from ECH, Bears fan.
Hey, Haize. This is ECH Bears fan. You asked where I was at? Bobby says if people have a problem with Caleb, it's a personal problem, so I'll respond. First, still here, still talking about Caleb. I'll address what you always mock. The reason myself, many former players, and other people mock Caleb for his nails and other feminine traits, like crying in his mama's chest after a loss. I know that was before the draft, but here's where it matters. Effeminate men can't lead real men. That's a concern. So he needs to prove he can. Second, Caleb is getting... I'll call back.
All right, so, and I know he stopped this one, right? And I think that you stopped it because you realized you ain't have nothing in the chamber. I want to be clear here. Everybody if you have legitimate criticism about Caleb, and this is the problem. You went into him painting his fingernails. You didn't talk about his overthrows or underthrows. You didn't talk about his completion percentage. You didn't talk about him, sometimes waiting too long to make a play. You didn't talk about legitimate football things. The fact of the matter is that you went to him painting his fingernails, and to say that an effeminate man, which even painting your fingernails doesn't mean that he's effeminate overall, can't lead men. Look at what Caleb Williams has done in the fourth quarter. Right? And look at how his teammates talk about him. I would say that is somebody that actually is leading the locker room and leading the guys around them, because it's done on the football field. That is why any and all criticism that can't come from things on the football field with Caleb Williams is dumbassery. And you need to get over your BS and check your weak idea and fragile ideal of masculinity. When you sit there and you talk about, because he paints his fingernails, you are so worried about things because it fractures your sense of what makes you a man. And if you were secure in that, it wouldn't fucking matter. You know what I don't worry about is Caleb Williams, Dennis Rodman, Jared McCain, anybody else painting their fingernails, because you know what? It does nothing to my masculinity. So if your masculinity wasn't so fragile and bitch assness, you wouldn't be. And I get it. You supported the channel, and in some sense, I don't want to come at you too hard, but I'm sorry. Even families and people like that got love should be able to be real with each other. This bullshit that you're on is pure bullshit. If you can't base it and root it in actual football concepts, then it's fragile and it's dumb. The only thing that seems to be fragile around here is the thing of how you view masculinity and how much that having a guy that's the quarterback of your team and being successful, it fractures that idea of masculinity that you have. It's stupid, it's nonsense, and it has nothing to fucking do with football. Get over it, get over yourself, and let's have some football discussions. All right, with that said, let's get into the next voicemail, man. This one's from Darius.
What's happening? Darius from Dallas, man. I just had to call in one more time because I don't feel like I had enough time to address the game and my feelings. So, first voicemail was addressing the game. Now I'm about to address my feelings. Because I know that there was not necessarily even though Haize, you said, you were going to be petty about it. So, like I said in the last voicemail, if you want to be, Petty Roosevelt, then I'll be Tom Petty, and I'm free falling, daggone me. I know most people won't get that, but it's all good. Yeah, man. And just from like a couple of videos ago, I saw, a couple of people in the comments talking shit. I'll just say this. My opinion on saying that we wouldn't make the playoffs has nothing to do with my belief in my team. I love the Bears more than any other sports team. I'm a diehard baseball fan. And I love the Bears more than I love the White Sox. When I say I eat, sleep, and drink baseball, I eat, sleep, and drink baseball. That's my favorite sport. But I love the Bears more than any of my other teams. I want nothing more than for them to prove me wrong and show that they're going to be a playoff team. But the fact of the matter is, when you have rookie quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks and 40-year-old quarterbacks who can go out and just get 300 and 400-yard games on us, what do y'all think we're going to do against elite quarterbacks? I'm just curious. For the fans that think that I'm crazy for saying that we're not making the playoffs this year. Listen, unless we pull something like what the 9-8 Giants did when they won the Super Bowl, we're just simply not ready for a playoff berth yet. That doesn't mean that I don't see significant improvement and signs going in the right direction. I believe that this team is going to be ready next year, dude. I believe we're going to be ready to go to the Super Bowl next year. I'm just not delusional enough, and I'm not drinking the orange Kool-Aid enough to believe that we're going this year. So, hey, that's cool. And for the people that said something in the comments about it, believe me, I'm keeping receipts on that. If y'all want to be Petty Roosevelt, like I say, I'm Tom Petty. But I guarantee you we're not making the playoffs this year. 9-8 is a significant improvement from what we did last year, bro. And I think that we can achieve that. I'm cool with 9-8. So if you want to drag me across the coals, so be it. But Texas up, bear down, dadgummit.
All right, Darius, this is what I'll say. You having concerns about if the Bears will make the playoffs or not is legitimate, right? And I don't think that's wrong. But I think, and this is just brother, and I want to be clear here. This is not ECH Bears fan. Darius is my boy. Everything that I say with Darius is in love or in just banter, brotherly banter, right? But let's talk about it, right? Part of the problem with it, Darius, is that let's just pull some receipts, right, from you. And so when you call in a lot, which we love, you are a part of the Chicago Bears Central, the Chicago Bears Central experience. So that means that people in the comments, people, podcast listeners, they know Darius and they know your takes. And let's talk about what you've said over the years, right? You were one of the first ones to talk about trading DJ Moore at Cole Kmet. One of the first guys to talk about that. You talked about Tyreek Stevenson being benched and said that he was trash, not just looking at some of the concerns from him, but that he was trash. And then when I responded to that with actual stats and how he ranked towards the top, and then when he started playing, well, now he's been playing bad the last 2 games, Tyreek Stevenson isn't trash. Does he have some faults in his game? Absolutely, but not trash. Then you also, in the whole Ben Johnson interview, you were one of the first people to call Ben Johnson the next Matt Nagy. You were literally one of the first people to say that in a voicemail. You said Javon Dexter wouldn't start. He ended up starting, right? These are just things off the top of my head. And I will give you acknowledgement in the sense that when you are wrong, you do come back and say, hey, I was wrong about this. They're playing better. But then you say that and then move on right next to the next negative thing. So it builds, right? It builds. And because you are such a big part of the show, that sticks with people. People do the same thing to Steve-O, right? So it's not just against you as much as when Steve-O's negative. People are like, hey, damn, Steve-O, for real, bro? Like, and so you got to realize that when the way that you move from one thing to another and go from, saying some crazy stuff at times to then at some point, then you do acknowledge it, but then you're right back on it. Eventually that wears thin, right? So, but like I said before, and I will support you in this, the Bears making the playoffs is not clear. And the Bears are going to have to work and compete. And like I said, there are only 2 easy games left on the Chicago Bears schedule. One of those was the New York Giants game, and we only won that by 4 points. Next up, we got Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Philly, and Green Bay. The next 4 games out, those are all going to be extremely tough games, right? So how they make it out that stretch is going to say a lot. And like I said, I understand the football thing that, like, unlike ECH Bears fans, you're actually talking about from a fan perspective. But we gotta get it together. And we'll see. But I just think, like, as just like again, that brotherly conversation is that you got to realize all that stuff starts. It snowballs. It turns into a boulder, and people will remember that because, again, you are a very big part of the show, and you're going to continue to be a very big part of the show. You just got to realize some people in the comments are going to come at you hard because they remember the last crazy thing that you said, right? But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Chi Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up or bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.